And welcome to A Glimpse of the Feminine. I'm your host Tracy, and it's about 12:30 in the middle of the night. So we'll see how this goes. Oh, I think I have ADHD because I definitely have time blindness. And I was writing and I was thinking it was probably about 10 o'clock and it was midnight. So we're going to go ahead and try to record. If it doesn't work, you won't be hearing this. Okay, so here we go. Then Job answered, I have heard many things like these. You are all painful comforters. Will your long-winded speeches never end? What makes you keep on arguing? I also could speak as you do if you were in my place. I could make great speeches against you and shake my head at you. But instead, I would encourage you, and my words would bring you relief. Job 16, 1-5. From the New Century Version. I'm going to be going back and forth between the New Century and the ESV. So Job's lost everything. Right? He lost his children, his servants, livestock, his health. And he has 3 friends who come and sit with him. Job 2 tells us in verses 11-13, Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all this evil that had come upon him, they each came from his own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. They made an appointment together to come to show him sympathy and comfort him. And when they saw him from a distance, they did not recognize him. And they raised their voices and wept. And they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads toward heaven. And they sat with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights. And no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his suffering was very great. What amazing friends. We often hear Job's friends derided, set up as examples of what not to do. And we'll get to that. But I just want to take a moment and let these verses sink in. They wept, they grieved, and they sat with him for 7 days and 7 nights in silence. Have you ever sat with someone grieving? Have you just allowed for the silence? Do you have any idea what a gift silence is? When we lost our son, I had a friend, and she would come to my house and just sit. I was very nearly catatonic. And I would be sitting in my living room, and she would come in, and she would just sit with me. And if I said something, she would reply. But there was no platitudes. There was no stupid things said. There was no pressure for conversation. There was just presence in the grief. There were many, many wonderful and loving things done for me and my family during that time, but I will never forget the gift of her presence without words. The artist Pink wrote, "I don't want to be the girl that has to fill the silence. The quiet scares me because it screams the truth." That resonates. Silence weighs on us. It makes us uncomfortable. Silence accuses us. It points the finger and it says, "You don't know what to say. You can't fix this." And even though that's true, we fight against it. And to prove silence wrong, we speak. Heading back to Job, as we start in chapter 3, Job is the first to break the silence. Job curses the day he was born, and he wonders why he couldn't have died at birth. He laments, "Why is light given to those in misery? Why is life given to those who are so unhappy? They want to die, but death does not come. They search for death more than for hidden treasure. They are very happy when they get to the grave. They cannot see where they are going. God has hidden the road ahead. I make sad sounds as I eat. My groans pour out like water. Everything I feared and dreaded has happened to me. I have no peace or quietness. I have no rest, only trouble." Those are verses 20 to 26 from chapter 3. And with that, Job's friends can no longer remain quiet. I mean, it's one thing to keep quiet when the person suffering isn't saying anything, but once they start talking, you have to correct them or remind them about the faithfulness of God. Right? Right? And here is where we fall in step with Job's friends. Some of the things they say are accurate according to what they believed. But there were also assumptions made based on those beliefs, and those assumptions caused them to misspeak of God. They don't necessarily misspeak of Job. They want to remind him that he isn't above trials and hardships, and they answer every complaint or justification of himself that Job makes. And just as an aside, I want to say it can be hard to read Job and not be like, this man is a whiner. But let's remember everything he's lost. So here's the thing. Here's what most sermons won't say. Job's friends should never have spoken at all. Other than I am so deeply sorry for all of this. And how can I help? They should have just kept their mouths shut. Even if every word they spoke was gospel truth, it was not the time. When someone is in deep grief, and he had just lost all 7 of his children, all of them, and his livestock and his servants, and then his health. So he was in deep, deep grief. They just needed understanding, grace, and love. Proverbs tells us a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. It's Proverbs 25:11. That means, in plain speak, read the room. It's not always the time or the place. We let our discomfort run our mouths. And in the process, we hurt those who are already hurting. A baby is miscarried or stillborn. We tell the mother, well, you can always have another. Someone loses their life, and we tell the family, well, they're in a better place. Someone dies following an illness. We say, well, at least they aren't suffering anymore. A mother grieves the natural birth she didn't get following a C-section. And we say, the baby's healthy. That's what's important. A parent loses a child, and you hear someone say, oh, I just lost my dad. I know how you feel. A wife loses her husband and the children their father, and someone will say, well, God is a father to the fatherless. Or the cherry on top, when we lost our son at birth, we received a card from a couple who had spent time as an interim pastor at our church. And they had an adult daughter who had cut them out of her life. And in the card, the wife wrote that she knew just how we felt. No. Your daughter is still living. You actually have no idea how I feel. Not belittling her grief to that situation, but it is not the same. Or how about this one? This one gets extra points because it's biblical. Somebody's going through something, and a good church-going person will say, well, all things work together for the good of those who are called according to his purpose. Let me just say, if you are tempted to say this to someone who is suffering, don't. You are reducing Scripture to a platitude and, in the process, deeply injuring an already hurting person. Or how about the old perennial, God won't give you more than you can handle? Just stop. Please, for the love of all that is good and holy, quit telling people that. For one thing, it's a bald-faced lie. And you won't find it in Scripture anywhere because it's a bald-faced lie. What sort of arrogance allows you to believe that you can handle breathing without his enabling power? Like, quit telling people that. The point is, sometimes, some of these things we say might be true. Sometimes they're just not. When you tell a mother that she can always have another, that may not be true. You don't have a crystal ball that tells you if she's going to have more children or not. So sometimes these things are blatant lies. But they're always hurtful. When we say these things, even if we are well-meaning, and I always try to assume people are well-meaning, we're minimizing the pain that people are walking through. Now, other than the incident with the card, I was able to hear some of the asinine things people said and hear the good intention behind it. Because I knew how the things I said or the way I behaved when somebody had lost a small child or a baby before I had. I didn't know how to deal with it. And so I get it. When we don't know, sometimes we just blabber and we say stupid stuff. But some people can't hear the good intention. Certainly not when they're grieving. And you know what? They shouldn't have to. We should be able to control our mouths. Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." Matthew 5:4. Romans 12:15 says, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep." I had the opportunity a few years ago to go to a first responder chaplain training. I went to our church board to ask if they would cover the tuition because I saw this as an opportunity to minister within our community, since our police and EMS have to borrow a chaplain from a nearby agency if there's a need. One of the questions asked was, well, would you be prohibited from sharing the gospel or speaking the name of Jesus? And I was like, I don't know. But that misses the mark. When someone has been traumatized by a fire or an accident or a violent crime, people don't need to hear about Jesus in that moment. They need to see Jesus. Weep with those who weep. They need to feel the empathy and the grace and the love that will support and uphold them as they navigate the trauma they are experiencing. Talking about Jesus comes down the road. Maybe. Because one plants, another waters, and yet someone else will reap the harvest, right? Maybe just showing up and being that quiet support, that empathetic witness, maybe that creates a softness or an opening for someone else down the road. Job responds to his trauma and grief the way many of us would. Why was I born? Why do I have to live through this? What have I done to deserve this? I've done my best to follow the Lord. And instead of letting his grief roll over them, instead of just continuing to weep with him or say a simple, I don't know, man. Or how about can I just pray for you? I'm right here. I'm right here with you. They had to correct him. They had to remind him who God is, even though they got it wrong. And they fell into the trap that so many of us do. They felt the need to impress with how wise they were. I mean, come on. Between Job and his friends, they go on for 35 chapters. If that's not trying to impress somebody with your wisdom, I don't know what is. So I've told this story before, but when my last kid to graduated, I was sharing with some women from the church how thankful I was that he had teachers that would invest in him and mentor him and teach him things, because it's hard. It's hard for any kid, but it's hard for a boy when they're trying to learn things, they're trying to figure things out. They don't have a dad to teach them. And I really, my mama's heart really hurt for my boys that they haven't had that. And I was so thankful for the male teachers that they had that didn't look at them as a project, but just because they're great kids, come alongside and teach and mentor. And one of the women said, well, it's really good to fail and have to figure things out and maybe get on YouTube or whatever. And, that's really good. That builds character and you really learn a lot doing that. And I thought to myself, yeah, but is YouTube or failure better than somebody who cares about you, showing you and teaching you how to do things? And pardon me for grieving. Later, I was talking with the wife of the man who was our interim pastor at the time. And we were talking about the church's inability, maybe I was talking about the church's inability to just sit and listen and grieve, mourn with those who mourn. And I'm relaying this story. And I'm telling her about, that I think there was a specific instance where he was having a hard time figuring something out. But I don't remember. And I was just getting to the part where, I'm really thankful for the men that have been placed in his life. And she interrupted me. But what about God? God provides, God, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you know what? Never mind. "Oh, no, 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 keep talking." And I said, "No, I'm actually done now." And I thought to myself, she couldn't even sit and listen to my story of Christians being unable to sit and listen and mourn with those who mourn. And had she kept her mouth shut just another 30 seconds, probably, maybe not even that long, she would have heard me say, "I'm very thankful for the men God has put in my son's life." But Christians can't be quiet. They cannot sit and mourn. They cannot listen to somebody grieve. And when we do that, when we have to say something, we're not only minimizing someone else's experience, grief or trauma, but what we're communicating to that person is that our discomfort is far more important to us than their grief. And we throw up a huge red flag that we're not a safe person to grieve with. And maybe you don't understand why that person is grieving over that particular experience. It doesn't matter. You don't have to understand to be kind. You don't have to understand to give comfort. You don't have to understand to weep with those who weep. Just do it. Just take a moment and look at a fellow human who is hurting and allow yourself to feel it. Maybe at some point there will be an opportunity to say a fitly spoken word. But maybe not. And that's okay too. July is going to be about suffering, trauma, and loss. Woo, July! The son we lost at birth was born in July. And part of the way I honor his memory is to share his story. And I just felt like, along with sharing his story, we talk about trauma. What does that do to us? Is there any way to avoid it? How can we help people who are in trauma? And what about suffering? Talked about it a little bit last week. Talked about it a little bit today. Some of these things may kind of get talked about in different ways from different perspectives through this month. So just a heads up. I am going to do my best to keep track on this month. My oldest son and his family will be out for a visit. Yay! Get to see the grandbabies. They're not really babies anymore, but still get to see them. So I may miss a week, but I am going to do my best to try to get an episode ahead recorded so that we're releasing on track. I don't like not being on schedule, and especially since I took some time off once I started my job, I really don't want to do that. So I am going to do my best to make sure that we're releasing on schedule. But if we don't, that's why it's my kids' fault. Not really. Oh, only get to see them about once a year. If we get to see them more than once a year, it's usually because somebody's died. So I do want to make the most of the time we have with them. And just a quick reminder that we sure appreciate your help in spreading the word about the podcast. Tell your friends. Like, share, follow, subscribe, and that helps us in the algorithms. Last week's episode hasn't really been listened to very much, at least on YouTube, so go and take a listen. I thought it was pretty good. I think they're all pretty good. I try to make sure that I'm giving you good content, and I do appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time to sit with me and listen. It's a short one this week. I had a lot of words written down, so I really thought it was going to run longer. I was actually really concerned that we were going to be at an hour, and we're just over a half. So I'm going to call it good. And until next time, take care.